Today on Accelerating Excellence, we have Mark Warburton. We're going to explore how Mark went from getting up at 4:32 a.m. for 20 odd years to be at his trading desk for 5:45, then dealing 1.5 to 2 billion a day in foreign exchange deals, getting home at 7 p.m. and taking calls through the night from New York, to winning championships at Brentford and the mighty Glasgow Rangers, two phenomenal football clubs. Mark's story is as inspiring as it is unconventional. A former elite City trader, he transitioned to coaching and quickly made his mark. He was a dominant catalyst in Brentford's ascent to the pinnacle of English football. And most significantly to me, Glasgow Rangers. Under his leadership, Rangers returned to the pinnacle of Scotland's top flight. Thank God. As a coach, mentor and leader, Mark has proven ability to build winning teams both on and off the pitch. And take it from me, he's an exceptional human being. And I believe his best is yet to come. In this episode, we discuss what excellence, leadership, coaching teams looks like in both trading and football. We discuss the challenges that come with senior leadership and how serious you need to take things if you truly want to perform at your best. I hope you enjoy. Mark Warburton, welcome to Accelerating Excellence.
James, how are you? Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm good. And as always looking forward to catching up with you. Mark, you've had such an interesting career. Can you start by orientating the audience where it all began for you?
Yeah, I guess it's what you'd refer to there. Are you referring to the trading? Is it the sport, the football? Is it
The lot.
Is it in general? And the lot for me
Yeah.
really was as a young age, James, in terms of always loving sport, always finding myself in that competitive environment. And I was very lucky to be decent at sport.
Yeah.
Went to the school, and you know yourself, you find yourself cross country and track and high jump and football and tennis, and you just embrace everything that the sport throws at you. But for me, that was really that understanding that competitive edge. I loved the competitive environment. I wanted to push myself. I loved being challenged. So really, for me, they were the formative years, because whether it was the football, whether it was a run in the track, cross country, and then taking that into the city, I always found myself in that competitive environment. And that's what I really seek. That's what I really embrace, James.
Yeah, and it's clear it comes through instantly. And in terms of the city, I mean, what was the first moment that you thought that a trading role was an option or something that appealed to you? Obviously, we talked about those competitive aspects, but was there any acute moment where you were like, oh, that looks a bit of me?
Yeah, there was first walking in, because anyone who's never been in a dealing room, we started off at a small bank. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now merged in the Bank of America. It was called North Carolina National Bank, NCNB. And it was literally getting a job, James. I'd left Leicester, had a couple of opportunities, and my mum said, or dad said, you need to get a job. Jab as a Geordie minor, you need to get a job. So she replied to an advert that said competitive individual, good with numbers.
Okay.
And that was it. I walked into a dealing room. I had no idea, James. But you walk in, and for those that aren't, you're familiar yourself now, but you walk into the noise. You walk into the shout and the brokers' boxes, the numbers coming out. You hear all the excitement. You hear the groans, the whelps. You hear everything. And straight away you think, this is interesting. Your ears prick up. The actual biggest moment for me came when I realised that I could do the job. Jump forward to it. You go through all the, people learn about apprenticeships. You go through the locking the telexes, getting the coffees, getting the sandwiches, clearing the desk, first in the morning at 6 o'clock, 5:45, last out at 6:30. That was normal, James. And that never bothered me. But I never looked at the clock, because days were going by and you got the chance to sit on the desk and start to understand it. And what I later realised, they were small. They were a small outfit, trading sort of like 0 to 5 million, 0 to 3 million, really small. But to me, it was huge.
Yeah.
You say to a kid off the street, I'm just buying £3 million against, you're doing what? So it was this fascination with the numbers. But then I quickly realised, by listening to the brokers' boxes, what was really going on in the main market. And these guys, full of respect to them, were on the periphery of everything going on. So it really was, that was the initial taste. But it wasn't until I realised, probably 2 or 3 years later, having done my apprenticeship, and then that desire to really push on, that's when I knew this was the right arena for me.
Amazing. And is that ambition, that natural inclination to see that opportunity and it ignites something in you, something you've always had there?
Yeah, I think you have pivotal moments. I mean, for me, I won't bore you with this, but I was given when I went to Charlotte head office, North Carolina, for a couple of years. Came back in '86, and they gave me dollars against yen. That's a currency pair. And they didn't have any dollar yen business. They had no dollar yen desk to speak of. So it was basically go and sit in the corner, Mark. We don't know what to do with you. You go and sit over there. So I had to try and generate business. And I literally, James, I cold called all the big Tokyo banks. So Industrial Bank of Japan, Bank of Tokyo, Sumitomo Tokyo, Sanwa. I'm calling all the banks saying, give me a chance. Call me for a price. They would call you for prices and whatever. James, I was blanked for 3, 4 months, nothing. And a bit of tumbleweed would come by my desk every day and this type of scenario. And then I said to the boss, can I go over there and try and generate some business? And to be fair to him, he let me go over there for a week. I might have told you, I went over there armed with sleeves of golf balls, so they love their golf, and these little mini bottles of whiskey. They love their whiskey. And I landed back and I got a phone call from a Reuters call, dollar yen in 50 million. Now, bearing in mind, they were doing 2s, 3s, and maybe the odd 5 million. And here at 6 o'clock in the morning, I've got BHF Bank in Tokyo, dollar yen in 50. If I say no to them, James, I never get any more business again.
Yeah.
If I say yes, it goes wrong. I'm out of that job by 7 o'clock in the morning, if I'm lucky. But that was the pivotal moment for me. So I made the guy a price. I'm literally like a five-armed octopus. I'm calling out other banks in Tokyo. So I get given the $50 million. I'm giving 50 and sending some more for myself. And while I'm doing that, the guy goes, another price in 50, please. So I know what he's doing. I know he's telling me he's doing more. So I'm now trying to get myself short to go with it, dealing with this. Long story short, he gave me 5 clips of 50 million. He gave me 250 million. I've sold 275 million. I've touched wood, all went well. We went down. I've got my money back. I've turned over more in that hour, James, than the desk was going to do probably that month. And I made the month's profit. Now, that's not to say an egotistical me. That was, you either make that call or you don't. Had it gone wrong, I would have been sacked immediately. But the boss walked in and went, much going on? And I looked at him and I just a little bit. But he didn't, and that made me realize that was the moment when you go, you're either in that or you're not.
Yeah.
And it was self-taught. And when I went to a bigger bank, I understood that I was really like a little scalper on the outside, playing the main guys were in the middle, and you had to join the main guys.
But in that, I think there's so many powerful things about what you've just said there. You're bang on about the risk, right? You got to take that risk when the opportunity comes. You got to take it by the throat, and you did that. And there'll be another people that maybe in the same scenario did that and didn't come off as well as you did there. But just creating that opportunity yourself. I wonder how many people sat there right now today are in the scenarios you were just before you went on that trip, who are potentially thinking about, should I go to Japan? But then not only should I go and make that effort, or should, whatever the effort or the intervention might be, but then to also, okay, engage in a bit more second level thinking, how am I going to build rapport? But what are these people into? How do I express some sort of appreciation or rapport building strategy of some sort anyway? And it's just, I wonder what would have happened if you didn't go to that trip.
And James, that's it. For me, I'm told now, again, I've been referred to as dinosaur because to me, face-to-face is the best.
Yeah.
You cannot beat seeing someone face-to-face and talk to them. And another added problem when you went to Japan in 87, or 86, 87 was down to the fact that you spoke to them on the Reuters and thought they spoke great English. It wasn't. That was the American intern. So the American intern was interpreting for the Japanese traders.
Did you know that before you went out?
No, I had no idea. So I turn up to speak to...
What intel you got from that trip then?
Yeah, so I turn up to speak to Kawazori-san, and Kawazori-san can't speak English, but the young graduate is translating. So there you are, having a cup of coffee. You're trying to tell him why you've come here. He might have had a bad morning, and be in a foul mood. What do you want? So I'm saying to the interpreter, I'll come over here to say, hello, this is my name. And the golf balls were godsend because they all love their golf. It's so hard to play in Tokyo. But I was an okay golfer. I was just, single figure golfer. And I could say to them, oh, you play golf? And yes. And then he'd say, what handicap are you to me? So I could go back and go say, I don't know, 8. Now we have conversation. We weren't talking about dollar yen, but the dollar yen wasn't the important. The important bit was that establishment of a rapport, relationship. And then at that point, he sort of smiled. And when I had that when Tokyo hit me, that first 50, I hit this guy, IBJ Tokyo, Industrial Bank of Japan. I gave him 10 and it went down. I called him again and down. I called him again. And he's now thinking, oh, this is the golfing guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now he's calling me. He suddenly called me for price intent. So now I've got them because I'm hitting all these Japanese banks and it's going my way, i.e., not their way.
yeah.
They're now calling me back.
I think
So
it's
that
such a powerful example what you've
oh,
just shared there about how being proactive, pulling on one thread, suddenly it all unravels, and within a couple of weeks, you've gone exponentially from, sat sort of, like you said, tumbleweed, trying to do what you can, to literally, how the hell do I handle all this?
it
Uh,
was exactly that, James. And also you've got to recognize, yourself, there's trading limits and there's rules you have to abide by for the good of the bank and shareholders and whatever. But there's also that you push boundaries and you constantly try and
100%.
see how far you can go. And that was so important because if I had not done that, I mean, within a year, probably 18 months maximum, I'm going and they're calling me Mr. Yen. It wasn't.
Okay.
It was this
Yeah.
misconception, but I had these great relationships with Tokyo
Yeah.
and they were giving me orders and I knew where the sellers were, where the buyers were, where the risk stop losses were being placed and the pain thresholds for various customers, where the exporters, importers were doing their business. And you're talking about billions of dollars. And suddenly you go from this tiny little trading bank to suddenly you're catching attention. And as I say, I moved to a bigger bank 2 years later, then a bigger bank again, and you go up, you sort of up the leagues. But you have to push the boundaries, otherwise you never really know, James.
Yeah, I absolutely love that story. I think it's just, I think it's a perfect example of everything that the behaviors that almost lead to any decent breakthrough anywhere, taking risks, putting the effort in, thinking outside the box, and building good relationships can't be ignored, right?
Absolutely.
And then how was that transition then as you went into some of these bigger banks? Because obviously it's incredible. You got some of the smartest, hardest working people in these industries. Because again, one of the things I've often bang on about is you cannot hide on a trading floor, dealing floor. Like it's black and white. There's no room for bullshit really. I'm assuming the standard and caliber of the individuals you're working with and competing against was going up and up too.
Yeah, very much so. And trade limits were going up. And I went to a big Scandinavian bank, had a great time, great people there, and really enjoyed my time there. But I found myself quickly becoming, in the nicest possible way, probably over that period of time, one of the bigger traders, one of the bigger fish in that
Yeah,
slightly bigger pond. But there was always bigger. And it's sort of like, I suppose it's like playing in the championship and wanting to go Premier League.
got you.
And I got that opportunity to go back to what was my original bank, but now they were huge. Nations Bank, Bank of America were huge, and they came and headhunted me to go around there. Um, and I walked in, James, and again, this was the best boss probably I've ever worked for
Okay.
here. And he led by example, beautiful suit, shock of grey hair, but he was a top trader. But he supported the team in a way, in a disciplined, structured way, which was magnificent. Learned so much from him. But I walked into the dealing room, literally being introduced. And as I walk into it, I see it clear as day now. The guy shouted over dollar yen and 150 million. I can't remember for customer service, so GNI. I went, GNI. And I literally had my jacket on. I didn't know even where I was sitting. So this guy went, go on then. So I went, where the brokers? He went, there's your phone, there's a board. So I went, what are you? Made a price, 48.55, 150 yours. Okay. I didn't know the names. I'm looking around. Now, at the time, I thought, God, timing, I just got in there. Later, I find out Mike had set that up. The
Oh, I
boss,
love
the
that.
boss had said to one of his big customers, have you got any business to? Yeah, we have. And they weren't fussy on the time. He said, do me a favor and I'll let you know. So he wanted to see, what did I do? He
That's the
wanted to
sneaky
see,
shit
did I
I
go?
do.
Well, I
Yeah.
didn't, or did I just, you had to, you had to,
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
you
yeah, of
had to.
course.
And it was great. And it got me, it allowed me to, 40 or 55, and he gave me. And I won't bore people with details, but I went, what's the price? I went 51 to 6. I went 53 bids small. No one gave me. Small offers at 55. I'm taking the small offers at 55. Now I'm 160, 170 long. And now I'm getting saying, now I need calls. I'm going to go 53 to 8, 54 to 9, calls, everything down to 45.
Yeah.
And this machine that I'd never been used to clicked into action. And suddenly we've sold 250 or 240, and it's now 40, 42. Now I'm going 40, I sell, and I'm getting this back. I walked in, and the thing was, again, I was lucky. It went my way. Two, I was able to go to the sales desk, the sales team, and say, there's a point and a half for you. Thanks very much. I booked in a nice profit in the first trade. I'll take my jacket off again. Nice to meet you. But it was like a Carlsberg did a perfect start.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was it.
yeah.
And
Beautiful.
But it was just these moments, these pivotal moments that I can look back, I can see, I remember what I was wearing, I can remember to see the guy Andy, I can see it because they are the pivotal moments, and they're the ones that not define you. That's too egotistical. These are the moments that just shape what you're
They
going to
set
be
a
and how you're
trajectory, don't
perceived.
they? They
Yeah,
can sort of crank your the trajectory you're on.
yeah, they do. And also, how you're perceived by your work colleagues.
Yeah.
Because whatever people say about it's you, it is. But it's how are you perceived? How do you conduct yourself? How do you behave? What levels of respect do you show? Discipline, etc. So all of these things, which to me are so vitally important, are a huge part of the overall being, I suppose, James.
I love that example, and I think it's again another thing it sort of illustrates to me is that trust, or gives you an opportunity to build trust, right? Because
Yes.
when you chuck people in the deep end like that, again, all those things you talked about, whether it's competence, relationships, how do you behave with that? Like you said, you're going to give the sales team a snip and things like that. It shows you, it reveals so much more about someone's character, have them solve a problem in a live situation than just have a chat, slowly introduce them, wean them in. That sort of cold, hard intro is brilliant for that trust building, assuming it goes right, of course.
No, it does, and that's the other bit. You hear people bar talk about their stories and exaggerate everything, and you hear about people saying, "Oh, just that example." Then, what would have happened had I gone 53-8 and they've gone 100 yours
Yeah.
and 45 up? So they tell you all the good things. They tell you what you have to do. You have to try and push the weak side, and they tell you all the nice things.
Yeah.
But how do you learn when it goes wrong? When you try and, as I say, if I go 53-8 and someone gives me everything, it goes 45 offered, and I've walked into a room and I'm now 200 long and I haven't got out of a dollar, it's now going 35-40. What do you do? And they're the moments, James, because you can read all the manuals you like, you can read all the books, watch all the YouTube clips, you can do everything you like to do about trading.
Absolutely.
But what do you do in the moment when it goes against you? And that's that, whether that's football, whether that's trading, whether that's anything at all in life, it's dealing with it's having the skills and the decision making process to understand when you're right, when you're wrong, when to cut, when to run, when to double up, when to have it, all of these various things. It's making sure you make good decisions at the right time.
Amazing. And what would you say was you talked about some incredible experiences there, but what would you say was your peak experience on the trading floor? Is there a moment
There
that
was a
stands
day
out?
I was at a big Japanese bond house. I went to work in Chicago for that American bank,
Yeah.
and they had a problem, and we were meant to go to Charlotte, actually, North Carolina, and they ended up saying, look, you got the choice of LA or back to London, and the family had no interest going to LA at the time. So we came back to, I was headhunted to come back to a big Japanese bond house, and there was a period a couple of years later, a year later, when the yen basically was in dire straits and everyone repatriated funds, and there was I think it was long term fund, long term credit went under, and it was billions and billions of yen. So we're taking yen back. So I remember sitting in the trading room, normal day, getting in the morning, 6 o'clock, you're sitting there, and someone across the other side of the room there, James, said, they're looking, GSIC, Government of Singapore, looking for a price in 500 million Swiss yen. Went 500 million Swiss yen. It's like 6:30. What's going on? And everyone's looking around, and suddenly another one said another hedge fund's looking for a price in a yard of yen, but dollar yen. So $1 billion. What's this going on here? What happened was we've moved from, I think, 121.50. Again, you remember it because it was the biggest ever day. We moved from 121.50 to 110.40. So it could be a year's movement
Yeah.
in that morning. And then in the afternoon, when people realized the trade had been done and the actual level should be back where it was, it went all the way back. And in that day, people were refusing to quote James. They were quoting a big figure wide. So normally you might quote 48.51 in 10 or 50.55 in 50 or whatever. They were quoting a big figure wide because they were just terrified. No
It's
one
the
knew where
sort of
this market
chaos
was.
that the top traders love, right?
But this was beyond chaos.
Yeah.
And we went down. I remember we going, it was absolute carnage. And it got to over lunchtime, it stayed at 110.40 and suddenly 40.70. And then New York came in. So New York come in and go, well, why is it down here? And then I remember that boss came up to me and said, we want a price in something like 175 million. Now, bear in mind, I couldn't get a price in 10. I want a price of 175 million. And he said it is for a motion trader. So I forget the name of the word now. It'll come back to me. But basically, someone goes on the movement of the markets. So it's going back up. So I'm thinking it's got to be a buyer. And I remember I got one thing that really angers me. I'll come to in a minute, but it was trading 114, 40, 60. And I said, okay, 115, 20, 70. So I'm quoting way above the market here. If it had gone wrong, James, that
Yeah,
was it, right?
yeah.
And the guy went, great read at 70. So I'm calling out. People are quoting me on 114. I'd lost them at 115, 70. I kid you not. And anyway, all went up. We had a great, got it in and ended the day back up to 119, all the way back up again. Quite incredible. Got out of the office at like 8 o'clock. One thing that bugs me in the back of my mind is this Australian bank at the time, I think it was like Bank Macquarie or someone, they'd quoted 40, 70, and 10. And I'd taken him 114. And he tried to say it was 115. And I remember my colleague going, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I'm going, when I look back, are you sure? That was a whole big figure on $10 million, right? But
Yeah.
there was so much going on. My colleague had the balls to say to me, "I just don't worry." And
Lucky
it
day.
still rankles me now that we let that guy get off with it. But that was the biggest day. That was a day that you look back, I had no idea what the profit was, how we agreed it. And at the end of the day, we made well into seven figures. And on the end, you go, oof, that was a day you'll never ever forget.
Yeah, and in those moments, what do you think? Obviously, there's that situational event. I mean, that days like that don't occur often in terms of the opportunity to capitalize on it. But what do you think were the conditions that enabled you to have such conviction in the actions that are required in those moments? Because things happen quick on days like that, and you haven't got time to get your pen and paper out, fingers and thumbs.
Yeah.
You've got to act quick. What do you think enabled you to do that?
I think you've obviously acquired um, the tools. You've acquired the tools that you need in those situations, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. You've acquired those tools. You've worked, and you have the understanding. But it comes down, as I said earlier, to decision making. And people talk about, oh, in those moments, that was chaos. I'm not going to sit here and say I was sitting there ice cold and all was fine. It was utter chaos, carnage going around. People shouting, screaming. People couldn't believe the movements. It was like a Black Friday type movement, James, where you have no perception of this type of volatility. But I just think the fact is you're in the middle of it all. And whether you just you trust yourself, you trust your decision making, you're going to get some wrong. And that's the thing. Everything doesn't go right. You're going to get hit. But
Yeah.
you can't afford to dwell on that because the fact is the market's moving so quickly, you have to get back on the horse again. So I think it's just the fact that you acquire the skills, you trust your skills, you have the trust of your teammates around you who are helping me through it. Everything was on my desk. That day was purely on the end because it was a focal point. So it's that rare occasion when, think back to the huge currency movements going through. Everything, the spotlight was on the desk from 6:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night. It was quite incredible. But I think it's just that having the trust. You walk away, and all it does is reinforce the fact that you have belief in your ability and you have belief that you can deal with that type of mayhem and carnage, which it really was, James, in all honesty.
Absolutely, it's fun, and that's why they make movies about trading, I guess, isn't it? Because that's those days are the ones that,
Yeah.
um, yeah, a movie worthy, I guess. The chaos, the opportunity, and then the big outcomes if you get it right. Winner takes it all, sort of stuff.
Yeah, and also there's things about being in the market. So the boss there was very keen to have our presence. He was a big bank mentality man. He knew that you had to be seen. Certain names, Chase, etc., Morgan Guarantee, Goldman Sachs, these big names, you have to be seen in the market in those times. And he was very keen for that. So in truth, I could have probably made a load more. We were caught all over the place of what was going on.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is, we were ever present in the market. We had the support. We were moving, and people knew we were a big part of it. So he was very, very happy on that day.
And ever so quickly back to that individual you talked about. I mean, what was it that made him special as a leader?
Consistency. He was
Okay.
absolutely consistent in what he did. So he didn't care if you're the most junior trader, the most senior. Um, he was so disciplined in what he did and how he conducted himself. But you knew he would do things what I was so admired. He would watch a guy. I'm saying guy because it's a male-dominated world. Obviously, it's changed now. But at the time, he would watch someone. You could get hit. Someone could come up to me pricing 50. They're selling 5 yards of dollars. I don't know this. They can give you 50 at 10 and it's down the pan before you even know it. There's nothing you can do. Simple as that. That's yourself, James. That's the trading world. But Mike might come in the morning and he might say, I sell $20 mark. and he'd sell $20 marks, say, here at 90. And at 4 o'clock, it was a big figure lower. And he would come back to the dollar mark trader. The guy had a really bad day, and he'd say, I'll take my 20 back. So he sold them up here, buys them back there to the trader had a really tough day. And he'd say to the trader, you haven't dealt with me. In other words, the trader has sold 20 for the boss up here. He's bought 20 for the boss back there, but he hasn't got the trades to the boss. So that the boss has just gone, there you go. I know you've had a tough day. Take it. He never made a show and dance. He would do that not every day, but most days he'd look around and he'd be aware if someone was struggling. He always had this ability to drop in, and he was just always there for the team, disciplined. But we had a really, really talented trader, a flair trader, what's the football equivalent, a Paul Gascoigne, Maradona type of player. And he was having a tough time. And the boss and the number two, I was sort of like the guy on the desk, but the boss, his immediate number two, went for a drink at 11:30 in the early run, as they always did. And the guy was having a tough time. And I looked at him, I said, well, you're right. And his limit, I remember, was 400 million. That was his limit. And his number two looked at me, the girl looked at me and she went, I said, what is it? And she just typed to me, he's 550. Okay. Oh. And I went up to her, I said, stay within your limits. Yeah, you need to stay within your limits. Yeah, no problem at all. But he carried on doing more, thinking he's almost dismissive. Yeah, fine, go away. So I'm watching. I said to the girl, what is he now? 750 odd. Right, it's nearly $1 yard of dollars. So I'm sitting there going, so I just phoned the boss. So the boss said, tell him. Have you warned him? I said, yeah, I've told him. He said, all right. He said, I'll be back. He just walked in and sacked him. And it was he's the best trader. He's the best player. You know, these are the rules. You've been warned. He literally got told, come to the office. His jacket stayed there. Security came in, took his jacket, took his gear, never went back to his desk. And he didn't care that he was the most talented trader. He didn't care. The rules are the rules to protect all of us. It's about the team. No individual's bigger. And there was a prime example, James, really, where he just went, no. And you look at it and go, wow, to be that consistent, that solid, that team driven, magnificent.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's something, again, I love about trading and investing in that perspective. But I've seen that a few times where I've seen Greg Newman, we had on the podcast recently. I've seen him in that scenario where someone's breached limits. And again, hot prospect, they've probably pumped millions in over a few years developing. And literally not even a question, you're done. And I've seen that in multiple environments. And it's something I've probably only seen in the trading world like that, because there are exceptions made, I think, in other industries, left, right, and center for talent. And I think it's something trading does well, particularly with limits, right?
Well, it's there to protect everyone. And when you have shareholders and you know, you have to report to various groups, be it the board, whatever it may be, and you understand the implications. And when you see like Bearings, you know, when Bearings happened, and Baring Brothers, as me growing up, the likes of Morgan Grenfell and Bearings and these, you know, Arbuthnot Latham, these old city institutions have been there for decades, centuries. And one guy was able to take it down by breaking the limits. It's obviously been a film and a book and everything else, but that makes you realize the implications. And that also makes you aware, James, of the responsibility that was given to young people. Yeah. You know, when you look around, that's another thing. You know, a 25-year-old player can walk out in a World Cup final and you say, well, he's 25. Look what he's dealing with here, 100,000 people and millions watching. But in the trading world, you can quickly, you know yourself, within 4 or 5 years, you can be sitting there with $500 million around you, in your books. And it's a lot of responsibility and also a lot of accountability.
Absolutely. And just to pivot 180 very quickly, in terms of your experience in trading, what was the toughest day you had out of interest?
Oof. We had one day where I had a really good morning, and we had a new trainee come in. I was at a previous bank, and we had a new trainee come in, and it was so busy. And what you used to do is you check the trades. You go into the broker and do a deal check, and in your head you think I'm roughly square. I'm roughly 10 or 20 short. I'm roughly 5 or 10 long. You think roughly, and you don't know. And then I went through everything, all done. Yeah, done. Because you had all these Reuters calls, and one screen can do 4. So if you've got 5 people, there's 20 calls going out. You can move 200 either way, if they all pick up. So I'm all done. I'm all fine. And then at lunchtime, I just said, I'm missing a ticket. And it absolutely collapsed. Really good morning. I've gone, where's that 20 I sold to UBS Singapore? And the guy, I knew it was. I said, have you got it to the trainee? and he looked down at the floor. I said, where's the trade? And he just said to me, he goes, I didn't do the trade. I said, but you told me you'd done the trade. He said, yes, but he was basically embarrassed. He'd missed it. He was too slow to do it. And all he had to do was go, no, I haven't done that. And it would have cost me nothing. But now, and from that moment, James, I'm thinking, now I start to chase it. I probably all broke all my own rules. I'm trying to chase it because all the morning and a load more have been lost. I'm trying to chase it to get it back and just digging a hole for myself.
Mm.
And it was called when I look back at it and review yourself, you say that was the catalyst for me to probably adopt all the wrong behaviors that you'd never do, go against everything you've been trained to do and taught yourself. And it was all because of that. I was trying to think, how do I close that gap? I wanted to get it back. All I should have realized was, look, I'm having a really good day, and I'm having a really crappy day. Okay, that happens. But I didn't. And as I say, it's a great learning curve. It's a horrible day because you just went from bad to worse and on from there. I didn't leave till late at night. But I realized you've got to stick to the rules that you set yourself. They're in place for a reason, James. And if you break them, you have to understand the consequences.
That's such a powerful learning.
Yeah, it was. It was expensive learning at the time.
I bet. And that's often when I get the phone calls from the lads, even the guys I've worked with in the past that I haven't spoke to for a few years. Every now and then I'll get a text from one of the traders I've worked with. I'm like, like someone's had a massive drawdown. And
Yeah.
it's classic. It's a painful experience.
It is, but it's character. I mean, that old sounds horrible, but it's character building.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
It is
Profit in it,
building.
but the profit's in learning. There's different currencies in a way, isn't there? There's different types of profit, and that's where you have to make sure that when you actually do have those horrific outcomes, that you extract every fucking ounce of value in terms of the learnings and the principles you violated and how you were part of the problem, and then it can often save you way more in the future as long as you apply the learnings.
And that's where we're better now, James, in sport and in banks, I'm sure. I mean, I left the banking in 2004, but I'm sure in how we review performance. There's much more open-minded to reviewing performance, more detail. What do we do well? What have we done better? Except all the normal review basics. But I think then you were more prone to just say, oh, well, and some of the boys have a quick pint, or I just want to get on the train and go home or go for a run and just want to get you clear your mind. But you didn't spend enough time really because it just wasn't the culture. You were tired, you were back in the following morning. And I think you've got to give at least 10, 15 minutes, even just sitting with a couple of your colleagues and a boss. Yeah. That review is so important.
Damn right. And so Mark, you've having this incredible, exciting career in trading. What's your relationship with football at that time? Because obviously you've been playing at a high level at a younger age. What is the relationship with football whilst you're in this trading journey?
I love football. I really did, Jay. I love sport. I love sport. And I was very lucky I had a choice like running or football. And I went into football at Leicester, young apprentice, young pro type, and played there. And I enjoyed that to a point. And I'm not going to digress from your question, but my manager at the time was Jock Wallace.
Okay.
Right? So jump forward 35 years, I'm sitting in his office at Rangers. Wow. At the time, Jock, and I think I've been very careful. I've met his family and huge respect for him and what he's done. But he probably put me off football because he was a Marine. He was hard as nails. It was his way, run up the sand dunes, run till you threw up over the fence. It was, and he was very Scottish. And if you come from London, I was called every type of name of a Cockney you can possibly imagine, that was the nature of it. But his way was you had to fight it. And I'd never come across that. I was 16. I'm thinking, what? I'd never been in that environment, James. Yeah. Whereby I'd always been good at sport. So I was normally, one of the best ones, so to speak, in a very humble way. I'd never come across this Marine type, dictatorial, effing, blinding, screaming. It was completely alien to me. And you can say to me, well, that makes a man of you. It didn't. It just told me I never want to be like that. I never want to be that type of person. It sounds very prophetic for a young guy, but I thought, no, that's not for me. And it really turned me off football. Mm-hmm. I went to semi-pro, thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a great team, really enjoyed the Enfield, etc. But football and sport was always there. So when the guys would go out, they loved me. They all went to lunch. I just stayed at lunch and I would go and train for football, or I'd go and run or gym or whatever. Yeah. So football was always in the back of my mind. And wherever I went, I worked in Charlotte, I worked in Chicago, Tokyo, Hong Kong, wherever you worked. If you had an English accent, you coached. They just presumed you knew football. That was the nature of it, James. And I ended up in Charlotte. I think I coached an under-9 girls team, an under-11 boys team, a high school team, the bank team. I went to Chapel Hill and helped out down there. I'm doing various teams and loved it, but didn't think anything of it. Just really enjoyed it. And going back to Jock Wallace, my only thought was make sure they enjoy it, make sure they learn, make sure they work, make sure they enjoy it. I went to the local pro team called Charlotte Gold, and I was fit. I was really fit. And the guy said to me, we're going to just have trials for the local pro team. So the bank said, go along, you represent the bank. James, the trials were running till you basically threw up. They were the American idea of the trials in football. No balls, just running. So I could run. So here's everyone else dropping like flies, and I'm running. And this Mexican coach is almost now taking it personally. And I'm like, yeah, what? We were head to head.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, this is nuts. This is nuts. So when I'm coaching, you've got to make sure they enjoy it, but get the work, get the benefit, understand the games, etc. And that was always my philosophy. And then I kept on going wherever I worked. And then my son, I've got a son and a daughter. My son was 8 and 9 and been asked, it's decent football. He went on to be a pro. And they asked him to go into like Arsenal Academy, Watford Academy, Spurs Academy, that type of thing. And he went to Watford. And I took him along one day and they said to me, oh, do you like football? And same story. I used to play, blah, blah, blah. They had no money, James. And he went to me, what badge have you got? I said, what do you mean, what badge have I got? He said, what qualification do you have? I went, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because in my ignorance, I've been away. I didn't know that there was badges. So
Yeah.
he said to me, well, there's this, up to your pro license is the highest you can get. So now they've asked me to help coach the under 13 team, under 11 team or something. My son was in under 9s. And I thought, wow. So I started on level 1, did it 1 week, and the guy got on really well. And he said, you need to go, got me on a level 2 literally the next week. And then he said, you need to get on your level 3 quickly. So I'd been accelerated, fast tracked through. And then suddenly I jumped forward in 2002. I think I found myself on a course, A license, James, with the likes of Ray Wilkins,
Oh,
uh,
wow. Wow. So,
Clayton Blackmore, Dean Saunders, Adrian Heath, Chris Coleman, these type of players, all and Barry Horn. These are the guys that I'm watching on TV at the weekend. And here's me as senior trader at RBS, listening, work on a course with them. So football's always there. But it was my son.
how did you find those out of interest on the course? Did you love it? Were you looking forward to it, or were you?
You know what? I loved
going?
it. But I tell you what, the best message for me, I try and tell my son, and try and tell people now, you need a hook. Because when you go into an elite environment, say you go into football, I'm not being rude to players, love them to death, but players have their own, what impresses players, and it's you're either a player, or you have money, or you have a car, or you've got to have some sort of hook.
Yeah.
And when I went to Watford, Adi Boothroyd was the manager, and he absolutely loved the idea of the city. He made so much so he made me do an hour-long, 2-hour presentation to the players and staff. And my hook was the billions of dollars going through the city. They were like, "Whoa!"
Brilliant.
So I had a hook, I had a carrot, something that now I haven't been you as good as Steven Gerrard. I haven't been a Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard or Wayne Rooney. I've never been anywhere near that world level. But what I have done is this. And it gave me something. If I'd gone in there and said, I'm a cab driver, I'm a bricklayer, I'm a skilled people, it wouldn't have impressed them. I had this hook, which really, really helped me. And throughout the career, that helped me because people are fascinated by the city and what goes on. They don't understand what happens in the city. And it's that lack of understanding, not saying ignorance, that's too strong a word, but that was my carrot that really enticed them and allowed me to enter their world. And then once you enter the world, just be yourself and you earn their respect and whatever else.
And what was the point? Because you're going through these courses and you're doing it at the youth level, but at what point were you was there a mindset shift or pivotal moment where you're like, right, I'm transitioning out of trading and into football?
Yeah, it was really, I was being asked to take more and more at Watford. And bear in mind, James, you know the working day. I was getting up at 4:30, actually 4:42. I lied. It's burnt on my brain. 4:42, out the door, got the 5:12 train, get into Liverpool Street, grab a coffee at my desk by 10 to 6 every morning, and then you'd work the way through. But now I was asked to do like a Tuesday and a Thursday. Could you come? So I'd leave work at like 4:45, get the train across to Marylebone, get the Marylebone train out to where Watford Academy trained, pick my son up, get a car, drive home, and get home at 10 o'clock, start again the following day. It was this relentless constant, constant drive to keep learning. But I was really enjoying that, and the blue touch paper had been lit, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I remember one day I was at RBS, and I say it full of respect, with a great bank, great people there, and a big Dolly N trade came in. They used to shout, the sales guys would shout across, and I had a bit of paper, James. I remember doing a passing drill that I wanted to do with the under 11, under 13s that night. I'm literally going X1 to X2, X2 sets back to X1, reverses. I'm doing this, and they've gone Dolly N for big shout, Renault Geneva, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, 1 minute. And it was like at that moment, and the 1 minute was probably 10 seconds. It felt
Yeah.
like 10 hours. But I sat there and what they're the trades you die for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was sitting there, we're all worried about X1 to X2. And that was, it sounds very profound, but that was the moment when I knew. And I got out of the trade and I missed the trade was a big trade and we were there for ages. I missed training and I was devastated to miss training. Now, in the past, everything was about the work. Everything was about the city. You never knew the hours were insane. You never even realized the hours. It was more an arena than it was a workplace. And yet that was a moment I knew that I've got to get out. And that was Watford had offered me. I'll probably digress a bit here. Watford had offered me a full time, but I knew I didn't know enough, James. You know, when you just know that whatever the subject, you know you don't know enough to justify A, being full time, but more importantly, to make an impression on the players. So I spent a year going around Europe just on my own money. Just again, go back to Tokyo, go back to cold calling the banks. I cold called all the clubs in Europe. I literally cold called all of them.
That behavior
Right.
again, isn't it? It's the 1 week trip to Tokyo again on steroids,
Yeah,
isn't
all
it?
over again. And it really held me in good stead. And I got through. I think it was call number 43 or something. I mean, called every name under the sun. A guy called Diogo Matos, who's now works for FIFA. He was head of the academy at Sporting Lisbon, ex-Portuguese international, top man, still a really good friend. He said, I'm playing golf in the morning. Get on a flight. I'll give you 5 hours of my time. So I literally remember booking an EasyJet flight, which wasn't easy. And I got the EasyJet flight and I grabbed my clubs and went out to play golf with him. And he invited me back the following week to stay. I ended up probably spending about 6 weeks with Sporting Lisbon. But then he said, would you like to go and see Ajax? No, I'd love to. Yeah, okay. So he gets him into Ajax. Ajax then open the door. Do you want to go to Barcelona? Yeah, Barcelona. Now I'm seeing all these various clubs. And this was 2004, 5. And if I jump forward to 2011, we did a series called the Next Gen Series, funded by Matthew Benham, the Brentford owner. We had the elite under 19 European tournament, recognized as the best tournament. And all of those clubs came into it based on the fact that I knew all the individuals. I could go out and visit them and et cetera, et cetera. So things happen for a reason, but it was that cold calling, that face to face that you have to go and do, James. Otherwise, if you don't do the hard yards, you're never going to get the success.
I just think it's incredible that example. And there's two in this conversation already, but I just hope people listening just that cements in their mind because the sort of experience you've created yourself by putting in a bit of effort. I mean, the value of that it doesn't exist, does it? There isn't a course or an MBA in football where you can go and spend time with people that have played the game at that level. That the clubs that are really every club you mentioned, they're they're iconic.
Yeah, they're big names. I mean, I forget his name now. The goalkeeping coach is famous Barcelona goalkeeper. God, he'll come back to me. I've had a long day already. But we went to Barcelona and I did a presentation. And on the one slide, James, I've made the mistake of putting a UEFA badge. And it was me saying it's a European competition. I didn't insinuate it was UEFA. I'd made the mistake though. And the guy came down and you've screamed and shouted. And another guy called Perigratigos went, Mark. No. Okay, he stormed out. So it's like, oh well, okay, fine. That's dead. That's gone. So I get home, I'm thinking, this is wrong. This is wrong. I literally flying at the airport going home. And I got home, I've gone, no, this is wrong. If I leave it now, you needed FC Barcelona. Their academy, La Masia, you needed Barcelona. So I literally got a plane back the following morning to see Barcelona. And with my colleague Justin, great guy. And we went back the following day and we just sat there he kept us waiting for ages and ages. And he came, what do you guys want? And we went in there, we apologized. We told him what we were about. And he begrudgingly went, okay, we're in. FC Barcelona are in. And we got the letter. Once you get the letter, it was saying, and every club would say Barcelona, yeah. Then we had PSG, and we had Ajax, and Liverpool, and City, and Chelsea, Arsenal. You name them, PSV Eindhoven. We had Fenerbahce, all these various teams. and it was magnificent to get Antwerp to get all in just because of the fact that they say they want to be part of it and that herd mentality. So, it's that face to face because it's too easy on an email, it's too easy on a phone call. So I'm busy, I'll call you back. Click. You have to go there because when you are face to face, James, it's so hard to be dismissive. You've made the effort. If I come all the way to see you, are you really going to ignore me? So I just think the old lessons, they're not all old. There's a lot to be. I think there's a lot to be taken from them still.
Sorry to interrupt, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're choosing to spend your time here. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can. And by hitting that like button, subscribing to the podcast, or a one-click review, you play a vital role. When you hit that like button, leave a rating or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider our audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents and management teams to free up their diary and come on our show. Thank you in advance for your likes, reviews, and subscriptions. Now let's get you back to leveling up. And then your career in management. I mean, would you talk us through that sort of escalation from Watford and then on to?
Yeah. The relationship with Matthew was briefly Watford were in trouble. They needed financial investment, and I'd asked Matthew was trying to buy Brentford at the time, was having a problem with the supporters group. So very long story short, I asked Matthew to come and speak. I think Malky was there, then Brendan Rodgers was there. Aid had been previously, and as Matthew came in, he actually got Brentford deal done. So he now owns Brentford. I got a phone call at 1:30 in the morning, I think, from Matthew to say he'd sacked the manager. Would I come in? This was at January 2011. And he said, would you come in and coach the team for the rest of the season? And a guy called Nicky Forster, a player, was the guy that the fans would know. Nicky's a great guy again, but the fans would know who I am. So Nicky was like the figurehead. And I did all the coaching. Nicky was a player, still never coached in his life. So that worked out really well. And we were 18th in League One at the time, James. I think we finished about 11th or 12th, something like that. Safe. And I thought, great, I'm going to get this job. And Matthew hired Uwe Rosler, the old Man City player, German international, East German international, to be the manager, and asked me to be technical director. And I was peed off because I really wanted that job. I got the taste of it and I loved it. And it was all encompassing. I really wanted it.
Now.
Yeah, that's what I felt. Yeah, but in hindsight, it was the best thing ever, James, because I'm in charge of everything. First team in academy. I'm in charge of sports science, medical, analysis, coaching, you name it, kit, logistics, everything. And it allowed you to, get really good people, but it allowed you to shape the environment. And one of the proudest things for me up until the start of this season, there was 6 of the guys are still there. I went there recently, and the kit man's still the same, and the analyst is still the same, and the sports scientists all there. They've been there all that time from 2011, and the kit man was brilliant. He's one of the best in the business, and he actually said to the guest I brought into Brentford, he said, we came here, there was one little hut over there, and this man's tried to recruit me. I tried to get him in, James, and he's looking around thinking, what on earth? But he trusted me, which was so nice that he trusted me. Now he's in the Premier League and been there for the last 15 years. Fantastic. Yeah. But it was that sort of trust. But it allowed you to really shape it all. It allowed me to work with the agents. It allowed me to, when we signed the players knew me as an agent, but the other players knew I could coach as well. So when Uwe left to join Wigan, I think it was, Wigan were just coming to the Premier League at the time. And Matthew said, I was ironing a shirt. I was going to the Arsenal game and I was ironing the shirt, and Matthew phoned up and said, would you like the job? And I said, I'd love the job. He went, oh, good. Let's chat tomorrow. Click. And that was Matthew. And I just went, I put the phone down, and my wife said, what's happened? I said, I've just been made manager of Brentford. But it was that bizarre type moment. Yeah. Loved it. And then we were very lucky to go on a really good run. We got promoted with Wolves that year. And then we came up, and that same thing now, the same features of just don't do enough. People saying, oh, you're going to your favourite relegation to go down again, the third smallest budget, you're going to go down. And then you get the players on board, and we put in a really aggressive bonus structure, City bonus structure. Matthew and I between us, and obviously Matthew's funding, and it drove the players, James. And we were up there. By the time teams realised we were good, it was too late. We'd been in the top 6, and we were behind.
It was incredible. I remember sort of seeing at the time everyone talking about Brentford. I think Brentford have been that. Well, they're the poster boys for analytics and forward thinking, but that was where it all started, wasn't it? It was that.
It really was, and we had a really good year. And what really upset me, angered me, frustrated me was Matthew's huge data. One of the smartest guys I've ever had the privilege to meet, and he's
Sure.
still a magnificent what he's doing at Brentford now. Um, but Matthew's all data, and of course, for me, it's a split. It's data and the human eye.
Mm.
So whether you see that as 70-30, 60-40, 80-20, whether you see it as 90-10, James, there's a place in my mind for the human eye. My only disagreement, Matthew wanted to bring in, we were second or third to Bournemouth at Christmas, and Matthew wanted to bring in a number of foreign players. And I'm not against foreign players in any shape or form, but I just thought we had such a good dynamic in the dressing room, such a great camaraderie and togetherness. I didn't want to upset that. We had the likes of Stuart Dallas and Leeds, Adam Forshaw, Andre Gray, Jota, Johnny Douglas, James Tarkowski was at Everton. We had David Button. We had a really, really Moses of the Bay, a top fullback. We had some really good players. I didn't want to upset that. And Matthew said, like, it's all on numbers. And Matthew might say the probability of going up is 24% if we sign them and 22.4 if we don't. And I was saying, yeah, but what are the numbers on camaraderie? Anyway, long story short, we're in the office on Sunday morning. We had a good result the day before. And David Weir, top man, now doing a great job at Brighton, but a really dear friend. And David Weir said, he's reading with his glasses here, James. He went, Rayo Vallecano coach turns down Brentford job. And I've gone, what? That can't be right. So I just phoned Matthew. Matthew would never lie to you. I said, Matthew, I'm reading about Rayo Vallecano job, man. And Matthew went, we need to chat. So long story short, the frustration was that Matthew made his call. It's his money. You know, I said, do you want me to stay on to the end of the season? He said, if you wouldn't mind. Had we got promoted to the Premier League, James, I was still gone. I was still
Was
gone.
that mathematical and automatic?
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah. But the frustration was, Warburton's anti-data, Warburton's old. No, not far from it. But the fact was, that's how I saw. And to this day, I still say data's great. I was on a show jump ahead with a Liverpool analyst, but he spoke as if data's all encompassing. And I'm saying, no, there's certain things like, he said, momentum, you measure team spirit, you measure that. Well, how do you measure team spirit? How do you measure camaraderie? So there's certain things for me, James, that I still don't agree. I mean, it may well be 85-15 now in favour of data, who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
But there's a place for both of it. And that was frustration that I left there from Watford, but from Brentford. But the good thing is, James, my CV was strong. You know, I'd had promotion, had the playoffs. CV was strong. I was very fortunate to get some lovely offers from there.
Yeah, and then we move on to that beautiful shirt you have on your wall behind you. For anyone listening, I'm a big Glasgow Rangers fan, and obviously that was another exciting chapter, another exciting time of that club's history as well, having gone through a tough period.
Yeah, I came there. Well, you know, James, as a fan, you know what happened in the relegations, been taken down and working their way back up. They hadn't managed to achieve promotion the season before. 13 players went. And I was very lucky to have some really good offers from big clubs in England. And Davey Weir said we need to speak to Rangers, of course, and met with them, lovely people. But still had some big offers, you know, big, I can't say, but big offers here. And I wasn't sure. And it was my son. I've said this story before, but my son's a football, fan and player and whatever else. And he paid me a YouTube clip, James, Penny Arcade, Rangers versus Celtic, Ibrox, Penny Arcade. It's an 8-minute clip, and it's a build up to kick off, and the team's coming out. James, it was on. Jack put it on full volume, and he said, "Are you going to really turn this down?" And that was it. Sold. You couldn't, you know yourself. A packed Ibrox, an old firm game.
Something else. I've never seen anything like it in any sporting arena ever.
Yeah. So for me, that was it, and loved every second. It was an absolute privilege to be at Rangers every day. Never ever was there a day where you took it for granted. There was never a day when you just, work again. You would just get up in the morning and you just take yourself for your manager of Rangers. That's how I literally, it sounds so corny, so old fashioned, but it's a magnificent club. And people who haven't been to Glasgow, haven't been in that fishbowl, don't understand it, not a fan like yourself. There's an ignorance about the size of Rangers and Celtic down south. And they're two huge football institutions.
At the time, I was hoping, when it all did go wrong, I was like, is this the opportunity in disguise to get into the English league? Because I think with the fan base, and also I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about Rangers is you go anywhere in the world and you'll find a Rangers bus somewhere.
Yeah.
It's madness.
James, I could tell you, I'm not saying every day, it's exaggerating. Literally, I'm at King's Cross Station the other day. Mr. Warburton, like this, and massive blue nose covered. And on the tube, I get the Potter's Bar, and the guy's gone like, he goes against his thing, we are the people. And he's going like, wow. It never stops. And it's just a massive club. But as I say, it was an absolute privilege. How the chairman dealt with us at the end was scandalous. Absolutely scandalous. I've got no bones saying that. It was totally wrong, totally inappropriate. We hit every KPI, etc., etc. That's another story.
Yeah.
But
and, I mean, on that, I mean, that brings up a really interesting thing. I guess actually, I might come back to that. I mean, I wanted to ask, how do you handle, because we're a big club and passionate fans comes a lot of pressure as well, right? Because the fans can be brutal as well.
oh yeah,
And how do you deal with that in a place as intense as Glasgow?
you have to understand it, and you can't say I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
Having Davey Weir was fantastic. Having Jim Stewart, fantastic. Frank McParland had been at Liverpool through the great, the Champions League and etc.
Sure.
So you had people used to those massive size of clubs, and I didn't get phased at all by the news conferences and news demands and media demands. That was all part and parcel of the job. You thrive on that. But the fan base, and you have to understand. Davey Weir said to me, "If you're 0-0 at half time at Ibrox, they boo you off." And they do. They boo you off at 0-0. You can be playing Barcelona, they expect to win, and they boo you off. But when you come back out again, it's a massive roar and a cheer and the Ibrox roar. And it's just dealing with the fan base, because it's not like down here. It's not Spurs lost to Ipswich 2-1. Oh, well, on to the weekend. No, up there, Rangers don't lose. Rangers don't drop points. I'm saying it's a religion, probably the wrong word to use, but football really is everything. It's a level of passion that you don't replicate down south, whatever people say. And you have to understand that expectation, because it means everything. And it's not to James, it's to James, to his family, to his grandparents, it's everyone. And even now I've got sent a beautiful case of whiskey from a fan who said, I can't thank you enough for that Celtic game when we beat them on penalties. And, it's one of the best moments of my life. So I got this new whiskey. And you go like, wow, this level of passion is just unrivaled, James. So when you understand that and appreciate it, you're in a far better position.
Amazing. And in terms of what you touched on there with like the chairman, one of the things I found fascinating as I progressed through my career is, I've been privileged to work with some top managers in sport, top commanders in military units, top CIOs, and everyone has got a boss. And the managing up piece is something no one gets to avoid. Everyone's accountable to someone, even the prime minister. There's always someone it loops back around to. I mean, what did you learn from that experience?
What I learned was I left Brentford, where I had Matthew, who is one of the very, very best bosses, owners. Matthew would call every night to chat. He'd come to train at least once a week. We'd go out for dinner every 2-3 weeks with Frank and Uwe, or whatever it may be. So I had this on hand, always available owner, boss, whatever you want to say, and someone who cared passionately about the club. And then I would go to all these courses like you, James, about managing upwards. There was a period of 2 or 3 years where it was the it subject. And how do you manage upwards when the boss lives in South Africa?
Right.
How do you do it? When you meet him twice a year. I met Mr. Marinakis, huge respect for his journey at Forest, but I met him in the interview. That was it. So when I say manage upwards, you've got to find the person who actually reports directly to that person, because you're not going to get the boss. And you've got to try and form a relationship and an understanding and a mutual respect with that go-between person. And it's so difficult to do. And especially when the owners, what you find, James, I'm sure the military is different, of course. But, a lot of the times these owners, these bosses are rabid fans. They are passionate fans themselves. So while they make business decisions in their own sphere, be it oil, be it trading, be it whatever it may be, when it comes to football, they are equally as passionate, equally as emotionally driven, equally as upset highs and lows as your average football fan. Yeah. And that's what I noticed. A board meeting, if ever we had a board meeting and we'd dropped a point or lost a game, God forbid, before the board meeting, the tone was horrendous. When we won, and touch wood, we won most times, everyone's very buoyant and onwards and upwards. And so that's really difficult. But in this situation, what you realize very quickly, there's only one thing that matters, and that's Celtic. Nothing else matters. It's just Celtic. And at the time, we had beaten them in that cup final or semi-final, but it was a great occasion. And everyone said, "Oh, we're back. We got promotion by 11 points, won a league training cup, got to the cup final, beat Celtic, etc." And now everyone said, "Right, Rangers going for the title." And I was just trying to dampen it. Like, no, 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 no. We are miles behind Celtic. They're packed with internationals. Their wage bill would dwarf 5 times ours. I was really trying to dampen it down.
Mm.
And the first home game, I think it was Hamilton, back in the Premier League, James. And I walked out, I used to get about 9 in the morning, quarter 9 in the morning, just a bit of time on my own in the office and just enjoy the stadium and just calm my head before a game. And I walked out and it had going for 55 on the far side. And my heart just sank. I looked out at the time, no one there. I think the groundsman had the sprinklers on. The only noise you could hear was the water, and it's got going for 55. Big, massive Rangers fan. And I was thinking, oh my God. And that was it. Because like fans, no one had told me they were going to do that.
Yeah.
And you imagine the expectation now is just going through the roof, James. And that's really where you just go, how do you manage that? How do you control that? Because you're not dealing with this level-headed.
You need to all be on the same page, don't you? And it sounds
You're not,
like you have
James.
that.
And the trouble is, if you're a fan, turn up at Rangers with your son and you see going for 55, it's here we go. And
Yeah, of course.
we drew 2-2. It was a nervy type back in the Premier League performance. And we got caned in the press. And you learn so many lessons. You learn, when I got to Glasgow, let's go back to when I first arrived in Glasgow, a really shrewd reporter, I still speak to now, said to me, there's always a good cop and a bad cop in Glasgow. What do you mean by that? He said, there's always a good cop. Right now, Mark, you're going to be the good cop. Ronnie Dyler is the bad cop. I said, but they're top of the league and they're going to win their 6th title in a row or something. And he went, no, no, no. He's a bad cop. So they'd beat Kilmarnock 2-0, James, and the headline would be Celtic scrape narrow win against lowly opposition. And we might win 1-0 away at some small, play horrendously. Rangers romped a magnificent victory. And it was constant. And then the second year when Brendan arrived, the guy phoned me up and said, remember what I told you? He went, careful now. And again, it was completely, I got caned. We got caned for that Hamilton draw. Rangers in shocking welcome back to the Premier League. Horrendous display by lowly Rangers. Wow. And then you knew, and everything, every comment, every headline, James, was negative because the good cop was Brendan. And that's how Glasgow works. And again, you've got to learn how to deal with your press conferences, how to preempt what they might say, how to predict, constantly on eggshells, because one wrong word and they're all over it like a rash. So great learning curve, brilliant education, but it could be brutally challenging as well.
Absolutely. And in terms of, I guess bring it back to the foundations in terms of you as a coach. You've brought through a number of players that have gone on and developed a number of players that have gone on to excel at the top level. What's your fundamental philosophy, or what's Mark Warburton's most important things when it comes to, you've talked to us a lot about making it fun. What else is super important for you when you're looking at the development side of the game? It's
given players an environment, James, where they're not afraid to make mistakes. And I don't want this to be taken as a loose comment. If you have someone who constantly repeats the same mistake, then you can't have that. But players you watch players sometimes. We're seeing more and more of the teams in the Premier League right now, for example, playing out from the back, taking some absurd risk. But players can't make a mistake and then be terrified to take the ball. They're human beings. They're going to make mistakes. You know that in trading, you're going to have good days and bad days. You want more good than bad. That's, if you can win 51% of the time, you're in profit. So I always try to make sure that the training challenge them. Big believer in challenge them and give them realistic situations in training. So yes, you practice some shape work. You have to do your technical work to build that base, but it's about giving them environments that they can constantly challenge and develop their own skill set. And once they do that, once they have the technique and the skill set, it's a decision-making process for them. It's making sure that, if when a young player gets a ball, what does he do? Is he going to shoot from 25, 30 yards, but the probability of scoring is this? Or does he have that extra pass to get in where the probability rises to Y? So it's that constant for me, making sure they enjoy it, making sure you challenge them, making sure every day you maximize every single minute. And then at the end of the day, it's down to you, James, recognizing what you think is a player. For me, when you watch someone like, I've been very lucky to work some great players, but like Nico Cranshaw, past his best by a long way, but he does one thing, one touch, and the players just stop. When you watch Bireze, when you watch Ilias Jair, when you watch certain players, Stephanie Hansen, you see these various players. There's some really talented. Go out to Brentford where there's some outstanding players. They'll do one thing and you go, oh yeah, and they repeat things. And you see, and that's I suppose what we get paid for. But I was a big believer in that, in attitude. I'm a big believer in respect. I don't care how humble your background or how positive your background. Respect and discipline are massive for me. That's the one word if I had to encapsulate everything, would be respect. Timekeeping is respect, for example. So
I got you.
we had, I won't say where, we had a star player at a club, centre forward, and analysis meeting was at 1:15 every day. And they're only going to last for 12, 15 minutes because the attention spans are but bang every day. And he thought it was really cool to get in at 1:14 and 55 seconds. He thought that was written to swagger in, thought it was great. Couldn't work out why I wasn't picked for the first 5 games. And then on the sixth one, he walked in and went, is it anything to do with the, I said, what do you reckon? Oh, you could see him, the cogs were, I could hear the cogs whirring. And then he walks in at 5-2 and he gets picked. Now, you could say, well, you're weakening the team, leaving that star player. But the players had to see.
You're weakening the team, tolerating low standards.
Yeah.
I think that's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah. And I said, no problem. You want to get in at 1:14, 59 seconds? Be as cool as you like. Be a dude and do whatever you want to do. I said, but you're not going to play. It's your call. But they need to play. Then their ego's hurt. Then their wage packet is impacted as well, James. So they're not stupid. They learn, but you have to make sure that you can see it. But in terms of the players, make sure you're consistent. Make sure you're disciplined, and just give them the love they deserve because they're young guys who are trying to thrive in a brutally competitive environment.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It is one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive sport out there at that, and especially at that level. In terms of some of the players you've worked with, who, if you had to have one of them play for your life, who would it be?
Well, I'll be very lucky. I mean, from a managing, I was number 2 to David at West Ham.
Yeah, of course.
So that was different. But the likes of Declan Rice,
Right.
outstanding. Just an outstanding character, an outstanding athlete, an outstanding player, but with a genuinely good heart. So I can't speak high enough of Dec. In the same team, you've got Lucas Paquetá, Brazil's number 10, just does things every day which just make you just drop your jaw. Such as a level of skill. If you then go back to players that you've managed, I've been really fortunate to work with some really good players, really, really good players. And you watch people like Stuart Dallas, who people wouldn't say, well, why is he not one of the best you've worked? Stuart, we went to sign him for £5,000, I think it was, from Northern Ireland, little club in Northern Ireland, on a wet Thursday night. It was lashing down. And we signed him, and Stuart would play left back, right wing, centre mid, centre. He'd play anywhere for you, just desperate to play. And you saw how he progressed, how he performed in the Premier League, how Marcelo Bielsa's go-to player. And you see a player maximise everything they've got, James. Everything, every drop of ability and strength and athleticism that Stewie had, Stuart maximised. So was he the most skillful player? No. Was he the quickest? No. But the actual ability to maximise everything you got, people like Stuart Dallas is a joy to work with. So very fortunate to work with so many good players. But as I say, it's just making sure you pick out and give them the best chance to really thrive and showcase and build their abilities.
And in terms of some of the leaders, you mentioned Davy Weir. In terms of the colleagues or peers you've worked with, is there someone that does stand out as just an exceptional individual?
Yeah, people like Davy, people like Frank McParland, people that you work with. I get I've got a lot of respect for so many people. In terms of how they go about their business. So having worked with them closely, of course, the likes of Davey, and fantastic having been there as an outstanding player. And he's a gentleman and consistent, looks after himself. People like Frank McParland, who've been the best at Liverpool, but again, they're loyal to you and they're good friends. And Jim Stewart, these type of people are top drawer, James. But again, it's making sure that I look at, John McDermott. I look at John and see how John works. I look at other people in the FA and, Gareth, and I speak to people at LMA, Richard Bevan at LMA, and you go around good friends, Sean Dyche and different people, Thomas Frank, and you speak to Matthew
Mm.
and all these various people within their industry. They've all given something, they've got something, and it's just a pleasure. When you find, I don't know how you are, but I find when I talk to someone, I enjoy the conversation. I'm learning from them. I'm learning something from them. Not just talking about your mates down the pub, but when you actually go and have a chat and you actually talk about the business and the weekend and the training or whatever it may be, I think when you're enjoying that conversation, you're always learning. I've got loads of respect for people who thrive in this environment, which, as we said before, is so competitive.
Amazing. And in terms of football as a sport, full stop, obviously the increasing amount of data, the strength and conditioning that's going into it. Do you think that there are changes to the game in terms of players' ability to sort of express themselves on a pitch? I mean, we've seen in the media some individuals talking about, players almost becoming robots and managers joysticking players. Do you think that is a risk to
I
the game?
think there's certainly, I think there's a danger that aspects of the game can be diluted. I see that. I couldn't sit there and say to you today, pinpoint, that's what's going to be the root cause of that, James. But I think, a little while ago, we had players talking about when the data really took hold, and even distance covered. You saw players jogging to go and get the throw-ins to try and get their data up, and because they were being judged on the data, shots for goal. And does that mean suddenly centre forwards are shooting from 20 yards because their shots for goal is going up to a certain level of ratio? I'm not sure. I think there is a danger that data does dominate too much in certain aspects, but at the same time, you can't dispute the fact that a good quality data is so vitally important now to your
Absolutely.
progress, to your success. So I think it's one we have to watch, and I think you have to trust your judgment. I think you would know, for example, when something is negatively impacting a player individually or collectively. So yeah, what it is, I don't know, James, but I'm very wary that we're rushing to data 100%. And I don't ever want to take away that human element, whatever that percentage may be.
Yeah, the discretionary overlay sounds important. What do you think the world's best traders and the world's best footballers have in common?
Um, they have I think they have a passion for what they do, a
Okay.
real passion for what they do. It's not just a job; it's a passion for what they do, and they have an absolute hunger to succeed, a drive to succeed, which I think is easy to talk about, but it's like the trading, James. I don't want to not answer your question. It's like the trading. You hear all the stories about, yeah, he bought 10 at 10 and 10 at 20 and sold 20 at 30 and made some more money. It dipped, he bought again and it went up, and he put a bid in at 40 and no one gave him. So he went to 50 and they tell you these lovely stories. No one really writes about when you, as I said earlier, when you put the bid in at 40 and you get given the world and he goes 20 offered and you're sitting there and it just goes down, and what do you do? And it's like in football, what do you do when you have that injury? What do you do when you have the dip in form, which is inevitable rather? What happens when you have a
Even
domestic
City at the moment,
situation?
eh?
Huh?
Even
So
City at the moment have
yeah,
stuff like
exactly
yeah.
that. What do you do when it might be a row with the wife? It might be you're trying to keep an injury quiet, or you're just generally fatigued. You know yourself. Sometimes you feel $1 million. Other days you wake up and I've been hit by a brick wall, and it's how do you deal with this all the time? But the best players, the best traders, find a way. They just find a way, and it's that
Okay.
old cliche, so to speak. But they do because their hunger, their passion, their drive is to succeed, and they're just competitive animals. And that's the thing, when you love that at school when you go back to school when you pick up a tennis racket, you want to win. You play basketball, you want to win. If you're going to do the high jump, you want to jump as high as you possibly can. It's just this human. It's either in you. Other people doesn't bother them, doesn't phase them. They're destined for a different sphere. But the best people I've seen are the ones that can really find a way to maximize their attributes.
Amazing. And Mark, what's most important to you now at this stage of your career?
Um, Biggest frustration for me is that you reach a certain age, James, and you're seen to be, oh, he's moving on to new pastures, and you get written off. For me, what's important is contributing, is making a difference, adding value. That's the biggest thing for me. I feel fit enough, touch wood. I feel energized enough to undertake a project whereby you can add value. And it's not said in an arrogant way. It's just said being in a position where you can add value to that club, that team, that organization is really important for me because, you meet people who are very happy playing golf every day. I think when I spoke to you, James, they're very happy to play golf 5 times a week, have a couple of Chinese, a few beers, and life is good. I'm not ready for that. No disrespect to them. That's not for me. So
Absolutely.
I'm still very passionate to be involved and to make a positive contribution.
Amazing. And what are you most excited about for the sport?
I'm excited that I'm excited that there's events coming up. You look at World Cups or whatever else, but I'm excited when you look at the way the young players are being produced. We talk about the Premier League and foreign players, but I'm looking at the way young players are continuing to come through. They're continuing to find a way to excel as the level gets ever higher. I'm watching Chelsea Arsenal and they're raving about Cole Palmer, but you
Mhm.
look at these players that are coming up, these young players being produced by the academies and the work that's being done, and the future is so bright. And they talk about the England team and all the frustrations attached to it, but you look at the players that we're producing, and despite the standard getting ever higher, and despite the brutal nature of the Premier League and English football in general, they're still finding a way to succeed. Go back to our previous comment. So I'm excited by the fact that we're still producing great players. I'm excited by the fact that I love turning on TV and watching football, James. I love going to a game. You do your media work and stuff, and it's always a privilege to watch it. And as long as that excitement's there for me, then I think the game's in a good shape.
Amazing. And I've got a few questions I'd love to just fire your way, wrapping up. One bigger one, and then a few real quick fires. But I guess based on the experience you've had, which is obviously pretty unique. Um, let's assume there's someone listening to this now that's maybe stuck in a bit of a rut, who knows they've got more in the tank, but aren't quite sure where to start, going through one of those periods that we will inevitably go through. What would your advice be to them?
I'd tell you what, James, I must get 3 or 4 messages every single month saying that I'm a level one football coach and I'm a heating engineer and I want to be a full-time professional working in the Premier League. And you love the enthusiasm, but too many just think, they come on to me and they go, "I love your story, Mark. Very nice. I want to replicate that." It's hard. And I try and say, without quelling their enthusiasm, it's hard. But you've got to find a way. I keep coming back to find a way.
Hmm.
I found a way, and it was just insane hours. It really was, and we were working. I go back to Watford. Sean Dyche was my youth team coach. Sean and I worked together, Malcolm Mackay, etc. And Sean and I took the team. We did some long, long hours changing tyres by the side of a road with the rains lashing down, and you go through that. So if you're committed to it, and in answer to your question, these people, if they're committed to it, they've got to ask themselves, "Am I fully committed to it?" It's not this rosy path whereby I just go and do my badges and I get another job at Liverpool, and it doesn't work that way. So you've got to make sure that the commitment is there and you understand the implications of the decision you're going to make. I didn't loosely just go, right, bang, I'm taking a 95% pay cut or something. I didn't just do that off the cuff. I thought long and hard, but gave myself a 10-year period to say, can I succeed in that 10 years? People have got to realize it's not going to happen overnight. So don't ever shy away from your drive. Don't ever shy away from the dream. But I think you've got to also understand it's going to be a rocky road, James, because nothing good comes easy. That's the key. So if you think you can just step out your job and be working at Manchester City or Man United, it doesn't work that way. And you've got to be prepared for disappointment after disappointment, cold calling banks, cold calling clubs. You've got to find a way to get through the inevitable negativity that will stand in front of you.
Absolutely love that, Mark. A few quick fire questions to finish, if that's
Sure.
okay. Favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie, Few Good Men.
Nice. Favorite series?
Favorite series, Suits. No, I lie. 24. I love
Okay.
that.
Oh, that is
24.
fantastic. Yeah. Book?
Book. I've just read, apart from your own books, of course, James, I've just read, what's his name? Eric Larson, about the American Civil War.
Okay.
Loved every minute of it. Loved it. I forget the name now. It'll come back. I gave the book to my daughter to read. It's so good. But I love books. I love reading. I really have always had a thirst for that. But that was one of the best books I've read. I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Quote. Um, Everyone says "Carpe diem, seize the day," don't they? But for me, favorite quote. John McDermott, when I used to go and see him at Tottenham, and he spoke about, I think it was a San Jose guy, or maybe I'm wrong, about pounding the rock every day. And I like that idea,
Yeah.
not to be basic about going out and smashing a brick wall, but that constant need to pound the rock, just to constantly keep moving forward. Because the moment you think you've arrived, you're behind.
Yeah.
And it's that constant desire. The moment, people say to me, "Oh, he's 30 years in the job. He's learned." No, no, he probably 10 years in, he was as good as he's going to. Now, where's he going to go? What are you going to end up pounding the rock, pounding the rock? And John told it to me. And it might have been the San Antonio Spurs, and I've got it written down somewhere. But that type of quote for me, there's so many good quotes, James. You
Yeah.
could
No,
reel
I
them
love
off.
that. That's perfect.
I
That
like I
to me,
like that idea of constantly having to pound the rock to keep moving forward.
I love that. Is there a greatest athlete of all time for you that you've enjoyed?
That I've enjoyed. I used to love track and field.
Yeah.
I absolutely love track and field, and I had the pleasure of going to watch Coe and Ovid train separately when they were at their peak.
Wow.
And that for me was just Ovid was like Ovid was like the blue collar worker, if that makes sense. And Sebastian Coe was like the Rolls Royce. And
Good.
I think I went down to Brighton to see Ovid train, and Sebastian Coe I saw train at Crystal Palace. And it was just to see these athletes, to see how good they really were. And I remember there was a race when I used to, I love going to athletic meets at Crystal Palace there was a one called a Coca-Cola meet on a Friday night. And I went there and there was Don Quarry and these type of people. And it was Henry Rono, came in Cram. And they did a special race, like a 2 mile race. And you're just watching thoroughbreds. I remember sitting there thinking, wow. So there's so many good athletes in the Federers and whatever else. But for me,
Yeah.
pure athletes, watching that, James, was just a total privilege.
Amazing. And what about a leader? Is there a greatest leader of all time for you?
Oh, be careful what I say here, haven't I? Um, yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to think about that one.
Yeah.
And then that's not to avoid the question, but I
Oh,
just think leadership is down to so many different attributes and so many skills to be applied in different situations. I saw a program on Thatcher, for example. I'm not about politics. I'm not left or right. I'm just saying. But you
yeah.
saw her reaction to the bombing. There was a program about the bombing the other day on TV. Just casually watched it, but never she never deviated from it. And the strength that she showed at that time, remarkable. Whether you're
I
Tory,
think she's
Labour, Liberal,
incredible. Yeah.
that type of thing. But there's so many big leaders out there. I mean, you look at the companies. You look at Warren Buffett.
Mhm.
You know, Berkshire Hathaway, and you think about the achievements and to lead a company and to lead finances in that way is truly remarkable. And as I say, you come down to the leaders you've worked with yourself.
Mm.
So, I love visiting the places that you go to, James, and seeing people there and understanding how they lead in their field. So I think to name one person for me would be almost detrimental. But I think there's so many good ones
That's a
out there.
that's a great answer. And what about team? Is there a greatest team that you've enjoyed watching or leading even?
Yeah, I think to watch is unfair because you and I both know we watched Man City right in the last 4 or 5 years have been magnificent. Then you watch the Liverpools and you think of the great Barcelona teams that you can from 2010, 2011 with Pep, you reel them off. So it's probably more relevant if you think about teams that you've led, and what you've enjoyed and that. And as I say, I love the Brentford team when they got promoted because of the belief that they showed. I love that togetherness, the demand. Johnny Douglas demanded from them every day in training. I love the way the camaraderie they exhibited. So yeah, that's probably a very micro, viewpoint. But that type of thing, James, when you're first hand and you see it every single
Talk about
day.
punching above your weight as well. That team
Yeah,
comes
because
straight up and then whack straight up into playoffs and
yeah,
yeah,
and that was there. There was one thing when you give a bonus and they said, "I will give a bonus to survive." You're saying to someone, "Just do enough." This is what I remember from the start of that season. If you put a bonus scheme in place and it's just a survival bonus, you're saying to a team, just do enough. So we
don't
didn't.
get relegated. Yeah,
Yeah. They got their rewards for coming in the top 10. And you look at them in the eyes and you see, yeah, fair enough. We get handsomely rewarded here if we go in the top 10. So that was it. Just go, go, go. And they just never stopped. So it was a pleasure to work with those guys and to watch them and with the staff and some outstanding staff as well. So yeah, that was it. But that's obviously a micro viewpoint, James, but relevant to the question.
Amazing. Mark, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come and chat with us. The messages and the stories you've given us all have just been absolutely fantastic demonstrations of everything you're talking about, whether it's that, well, from pounding the rock to developing that killer instinct, finding a way, and to just taking a risk, getting on the flight to Tokyo, reaching out to the clubs around Europe, just making things happen, and not accepting obstacles as obstacles, find them as opportunities to sort of hop over, under, or around some way. I think they're extremely powerful examples.
No, James, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation, James. Very kind of you. It's been a great to chat to you, and hopefully we chat again soon.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to it. Cheers, Mark.
James, all the very best.
Whilst I hope you've enjoyed our conversation, the magic happens when you put the principles to work by aligning yourself with them. People who listen to podcasts like this tend to fall into one of two categories. The first experience is a high that fades, and before they know it, it's back to business as usual. Nothing changes. The second group, your group, also feel the high, but they sustain it and go on to achieve significant change. What distinguishes the two? Putting these lessons or principles to work immediately. This is potentially game-changing information. I've seen it, but it can't change anything if you don't act on it. Remember, this is not just for accelerating excellence, but also for maximizing your quality of life. There is always a way to optimize, and the secret to becoming everything you can be is to just start. So, if something resonated with you in this conversation, act on it. Excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. So go on the attack and win your day. Chances are you know someone that needs to listen to this conversation. Please make sure to share a link with them and keep me updated with how you get on. Make sure you slam any questions in the comments or reach out directly. I've got you covered. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you're going to find the book useful. The book is more of an operation manual. It's a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit. It's a #1 bestseller filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. Head to jamesaking.com to download 6 chapters free in audio or digital format. The full book's available on Amazon, Audible, or at your local bookstore. All links are in the show notes. The game has changed. The players have changed. The hard truth is it has become harder to identify elite performers to drive your organization forward and ignite a winning mentality within today's workforce. Without the right talent, without the right mentality, and without the right performance systems to deliver these, outlier performance will remain your goal, not your reality. At A6 Partners, we solve this problem every day in the most demanding arenas. The talent, the mentality, it's there. It is possible. Our performance systems are not designed to tick boxes, tolerate bias, or ensure comfort. They are designed to ensure performance where performance is all that matters. We embed elite performance systems to attract and select the right people and develop and motivate those people. From short, sharp, sledgehammer, intensive change programs, right through to long-term sustained partnership. We work with our partners to transition your organization into a magnet for elite talent and embed a systematic process for selecting winners. We build world-class development programs to transform raw talent into sustained high performance. We instill winning cultures that set and live by their own demanding standards, resulting in a team of autonomous, high-performing, and resilient problem solvers who deliver. Our team of consultants is comprised of the outlier individuals I've worked with firsthand over decades. This includes PhD performance scientists, senior British and American Special Forces operators, Olympic gold medal winning coaches, world-leading psychologists, and C-level leaders from trading and investing. For us, second place is not an option. If you're sick to death of mediocrity and truly want your team to excel, then click the link in show notes and get in touch now. When was the last time you launched yourself out your comfort zone? Here's your chance to do exactly that. On May the 17th, we're entering an Accelerating Excellence team at the London Spartan Trifecta weekend. I want you on that team. It's free, but spots are limited, so you're going to need to act fast. This is all powered by my pal, Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan, multiple New York Times best-selling author, and the ultimate advocate for doing hard things. You'll be racing alongside myself, guests from this podcast, and some of my peer group from trading, investing, elite military, and sport. We don't care what your current state of fitness or life is. In fact, the lower the better. The thing I love most about events like Spartan is that they provide us with an opportunity to voluntarily confront challenge, physically and mentally. This means you don't have to wait for life to inevitably slam one your way before you decide to level up. It's an opportunity to carve out your own mind and emerge stronger from challenge than you went in. On race day, I'll be hosting an exclusive Q&A session where we'll discuss everything elite performance. Spots are limited and they're going fast. Don't overthink it. Click the link in the show notes now and sign up as an individual, with a friend, partner, your team, or company. By doing so, you instantly become part of an ambitious, like-minded team of people who set high standards and attack challenges head on. Get it done now, and I'll see you on the 17th of May.